baptized really came from an article that I had read in a newspaper, a local newspaper, that was profiling a young man who was suffering from schizophrenia and had really become trapped in a broken and underfunded mental health care system in Canada. And a lot of the sparks of inspiration for my fiction come from articles that I read in the newspaper. But this particular story spoke very movingly about this young man who was homebound and afraid to go outside because he thought that the birds in the trees were yelling obscenities at him. And in his delusional mind, he was very frightened of that. And I thought it would be an interesting image to work with and an interesting idea to write a story about a protagonist who was consumed by delusions and trapped by their mental illness. And I also thought it would be interesting to work on a character that was themselves a figment of a delusional mind. So I set myself those challenges, and around the same time I was reading some legal cases about women who had suffered through postpartum psychosis and onset of psychotic break that often happens to certain women right after childbirth. And again, I thought it would be interesting to explore some of the horrible acts that these women are driven to commit against themselves and against their children, sometimes with tragic consequences, and to get inside the mind of a woman who is going through these delusions and suffering from this illness. And it was a bit of almost an aha moment for me to have these ideas, the imagery of these birds shouting obscenities and women who are trapped inside of their minds and delusions. And I decided that I would create a character that was the personification of this one woman's delusions. And I wanted him to be very sinister, and I wanted a certain religious tone, and I wanted to use him as an instrument for a foreboding movement in the story, foreshadowing, of a tragic consequence. But I don't think any of the early drafts of the story were really going in the direction that I wanted them to go in, and it can be, frankly, pretty frustrating for an emerging writer when you don't have that network of connections and other writers to work with, and you can get too close to your own work sometimes and not be able to figure out what it is that's going wrong. And that's where, as an emerging writer, you can really benefit from participation in a competition like the Carter Cooper Short Fiction Competition. It's sponsored by Gloria Vanderbilt, who is herself a very talented artist and a philanthropist, and it's certainly one of the most generous literary prizes available in Canada, which is of no small importance because we live in an era where it's almost impossible to make a career out of writing fiction. And as impossible as that is, it's even harder to get started when you don't yet have a name for yourself out there in the marketplace and nobody knows who you are and you have nothing on your resume. So one of the greatest things about this particular competition is that it's open to both writers who are at a more advanced stage of their career, but also emerging writers like myself. And in fact, the lion's share of the prize money is reserved for a writer who's in that emerging category. And it's really hard to quantify the importance of that, because this is a prize that allows young writers to keep writing. It gives them the resources that it takes to continue to work on their fiction. I think of equal value for me specifically was the opportunity to kind of rub shoulders with these writers who are a little bit further along in their careers, because the competition culminates in this weekend of amazing events where you get to go and mix and mingle with the current shortlisted finalists, last year's finalists and winners, other writers of renown, the publishers and the editors at Exile, and Gloria Vanderbilt herself, which is a special kind of thrill that only happens once in a lifetime. Writing is by its nature very solitary engagement. And the opportunity to go out and meet with these writers and network with them is invaluable. And I'm really pleased to have been able to come away from the experience with these connections to writers that I've long followed and really admired, and other writers who are clearly ones to watch going forward. Linda Rogers has become a friend, Helen Marshall, Frank Westcott, Leon Rourke, which is amazing. Jason Timmermanis, who won the prize this year, whose story just blew me away. I mean, it was an amazing opportunity for me, and having mentorship from other writers, I think, is critical to success.